Ever imagined a billionaire CEO who has conquered the world suddenly find himself caught in a situation he never expected? A tiny toy car, a priceless gift to two twin boys, changed everything for them. This story of compassion and unexpected transformation will leave you thinking. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you want to hear more of this heartwarming journey. Blake Harrison, a 42-year-old CEO and the mastermind behind Harrison Industries, had spent his entire life building his empire. He was a man of ambition, calculated risks, and relentless work ethic. Yet, despite all his wealth and success, there was a deep emptiness that had settled in his soul after the tragic loss of his wife, Sarah, and his young son, Thomas, in a car accident 5 years ago. Ever since that fateful day, Blake had locked away his emotions, determined never to feel vulnerable again. In his eyes, people were either assets or obstacles, and relationships were nothing more than transactions. The solitude that had enveloped his mansion became a comfortable prison, one he never thought to escape. Until that cold autumn morning in Central Park, everything changed. It all started with a pair of desperate blue eyes staring up at him. Zach and Lucas Wilson, identical. Twin boys no older than 10, were huddled together on a bench, their small hands clutching a weathered toy car. It was a bright red model, gleaming in the morning sun despite its edges being worn and chipped. To any passerby, it looked like nothing more than a child's toy. But to Zach and Lucas, it was everything. It was all they had left to save their mother, Catherine, who lay at death's door in their tiny rundown apartment. Zach's voice trembled as he spoke, his hands twisting nervously around the toy. "Excuse me, sir," he called out to Blake, his heart racing. "Would you like to buy our car? It's really special. It's fast, and the door's even open." His voice was laced with desperation, but Blake barely heard the words. His mind was focused on the sleek black car parked nearby, the meeting he was running late for, and the endless stream of numbers and projections that consumed his every waking moment. Blake was about to walk past them, as he had done so many times before with street vendors and beggars, but something in Zach's voice stopped him. It wasn't the usual call for spare change or a quick fix. It was something more raw, more genuine. Blake stopped. His eyes met Zach's, and for a moment, he saw something in those eyes that struck him deeper than he cared to admit. The unspoken plea for help. Without really knowing why, Blake turned back. "How much do you want for it?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. "Whatever you can pay," Lucas replied, his voice tight with emotion. "We just need it for our mom. She's really sick." The words hit Blake like a punch to the gut. He stood, frozen, looking down at the small, precious toy. He could see the faint fingerprints on its surface, the way it had been held and cherished. For a moment, Blake wondered what kind of world he had built, one where these innocent children had to resort to selling their toys just to survive. Without thinking, Blake reached for his wallet. He pulled out several large bills and handed them to Zach, who stared at the money in disbelief. "Take it," Blake said, feeling an odd tightness in his chest. "Will this help?" Zach's eyes widened, and for the first time that day, a glimmer of hope flickered in them. He handed Blake the car, his small fingers lingering just a moment longer than necessary, as if unwilling to part with it, despite knowing it was their only way out. "Thank you, sir," he said, his voice trembling with relief. "This will help our mom a lot." Blake watched the twins hurry away, clutching the money tightly. He should have continued his walk, gone back to his meeting, and forgotten about them. But something inside him stirred, something he hadn't felt in years. As he stood there, the cold autumn wind blowing through the park, Blake felt a sudden pull to follow them, to see where they went. "Follow them," Blake told his driver, surprising even himself with the command. "I want to see where they live." The drive was slow, the car trailing the boys as they navigated through the busy streets, their small figures darting through the crowd with a sense of urgency. Blake felt an unfamiliar unease creep into his chest as he watched them. He had built his life around control, around keeping everything perfectly in place. But this was different. He couldn't shake the feeling that what was unfolding before him was important, something beyond his usual concerns of profit margins and corporate growth. They arrived at a dilapidated apartment building in one of the city's forgotten neighborhoods. Blake's car, sleek and polished, seemed out of place in the shabby surroundings. He parked at a distance, staring at the building as the twins disappeared inside. He didn't know why he was still there, but he couldn't leave. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was where his life was about to change. Blake climbed the 4 flights of stairs, each step heavier than the last. The air grew stale as he reached the door of their apartment, its paint peeling and worn. He knocked, his heart pounding in his chest. The door creaked open, revealing one of the twins, his face a mixture of confusion and suspicion. "It's the man from the park," the boy said, voice trembling. Blake stepped inside, and his eyes were immediately drawn to Catherine Wilson, lying on a thin mattress in the corner. She was pale, her breathing shallow, a faint sheen of sweat on her forehead. Despite her obvious illness, she looked eerily similar to her sons. Blake felt a pang of guilt gnawing at him as he knelt beside her, gently touching her arm. Her skin was burning with fever. "She needs a hospital," Blake said, his voice low but firm. Lucas, the other twin, looked at him with wide, fearful eyes. "We don't have money. That's why we were selling the car." Blake didn't hesitate. He made a decision in that moment, a decision that would change everything. "I'll take care of it," he said. The twins exchanged a glance, their faces full of confusion and gratitude. "How will we ever pay you back?" Zach asked, still clutching the money they had earned. Blake smiled softly, though it didn't reach. His eyes. "You already sold me your car. Now it's my turn to help." Without another word, Blake lifted Catherine in his arms, feeling the heat radiating from her body. As he walked her down the stairs, the twins followed closely behind, their faces filled with both relief and worry. They were about to leave behind the only life they had ever known, and step into a new one Blake wasn't sure they were ready for. But as Blake looked down at the toy car in his pocket, he couldn't help but wonder, had he truly made the right choice, or was this just the beginning of something he couldn't control? Catherine Wilson's perspective. Catherine Wilson woke up in the dimly lit room, the first sensation being an overwhelming, feverish heat. She opened her eyes, trying to focus, but the lines between dream and reality blurred. The pain throughout. Her body made it almost impossible to move. She tried to sit up, but her strength had completely drained away. Every inch of her felt fragile, exhausted, as if the world itself was pressing down on her. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she felt someone watching her. She blinked slowly, and her blurry vision gradually cleared, only to meet the worried eyes of her twin sons. Lucas, the stronger of the two, had tears staining his cheeks. Zach stood beside him trying to smile, but it was weak, forced. Catherine managed a faint smile in return, but it nearly broke her heart. She couldn't hide her fear from them anymore. She had no idea how long she had been trapped in this sickened state. Just yesterday she could walk around the house, albeit weakly, but today she could barely hold herself up. The hospital bills, the mounting debt, they kept running through her mind. Her children had been through so much. The only thing that kept her going was the thought of seeing them grow up happy, healthy. But now, with her health failing and no way to afford treatment, Catherine couldn't be the mother she so desperately wanted to be. But when she heard Zach and Lucas's voices, her heart sank. They were talking to someone who had stopped, someone who had heard their plea. Catherine could hear Zach's desperate tone, a plea she never imagined her sons would have to make. "Mom, we need this car to save Mom." The words hit her like a tidal wave. She knew they had to sell their toys to survive, but the fact that they were selling something so precious to them, a cherished, worn-out toy car, just to save her shattered her. She felt like she was suffocating, unable to protect them, unable to give them what they deserved. The overwhelming guilt filled her chest, choking her. How had things come to this? When Blake Harrison appeared, Catherine felt a strange mix of emotions. He was the CEO of a massive global tech empire, someone whose life was a world apart from hers. Why would he stop for them? Why would he help? But then, something changed. When he handed Zach a stack of money, more than they could have ever dreamed of. Catherine's breath caught in her throat. She watched him, not knowing what to think. He could have walked away, but instead, he stayed. And in his eyes, Catherine saw something unexpected. Compassion. She couldn't make sense of it. This man, who had everything she and her children would never have, was giving it to them. He was offering more than just money. He was offering them hope, a lifeline. And that frightened Catherine. How could they accept help from someone like him? Did he expect something in return? As Blake carried her to the hospital, Catherine felt her world spin. She felt like an imposter in a life she never asked for. She could feel the stares of the doctors and nurses as Blake commanded the room with ease. But Catherine? She was a mother who couldn't provide for her children. She wasn't supposed to be here in this pristine hospital with someone like Blake Harrison. Every part of her resisted the idea that they belonged in this world. Blake's world. He had everything: power, wealth, control. But for the first time, Catherine realized that the most valuable thing he had given them wasn't money or material things. It was time. Blake had shown up when no one else had, and that made her question everything she had believed about people like him. Still, doubts gnawed at her. She felt like a burden to him. She knew the world saw people like her, struggling, poor, desperate, as nothing more than charity cases. And now, with Blake's sudden intrusion into their lives, she wondered how long they could stay. How long would this generosity last? The mansion they entered was a world apart from their apartment, a place Catherine couldn't have dreamed of in her wildest fantasies. The grandeur of it, the opulence, was overwhelming. She felt out of place, like a fish out of water. Blake lived in a world she didn't belong to, and yet, here she was, living in his house, accepted as part of it. But for Catherine, it wasn't just about the luxury. It was about the disconnect she felt between her life and his. She was afraid of getting too comfortable, afraid of letting herself and her children become too dependent on him. Blake, in his own way, had broken down her walls. But she was still fighting herself, fighting the belief that she was nothing but a guest in his world, one that could be dismissed at any moment. And what would happen when her treatment was over? Would she have the strength to return to her own life, to give her children the stability they deserved? As days passed, Catherine started to see Blake not just as the CEO who was helping them out of charity, but as a man who had somehow become part of their lives. The laughter of her sons, the warmth of the house, these were things she hadn't had for years, but the uncertainty still lingered in her heart. She wanted to believe that Blake wasn't just offering help out of pity, but the truth was, she didn't know him well enough to trust that. When Catherine overheard Lucas's innocent remark about how Blake had changed, about how he wasn't just giving them help, but also becoming part of their family, something inside her shifted. She couldn't ignore the bond that was forming between Blake and her children. And it scared her, not because it was a bad thing, but because it was something she wasn't sure she could hold on to forever. Blake had already done so much for them. But in that moment, Catherine realized that no matter how much Blake gave them, the real question was whether she and her children could ever truly belong in his world. Could they build a future together? Or was this just a temporary fix for a broken situation? Catherine found herself torn between gratitude and fear, between letting go of her pride and accepting the love Blake had to offer. The uncertainty of it all was suffocating. Yet for the first time in years, she realized she had no choice but to face her feelings, to confront the life she had built with her children, and whether Blake could be a part of that life or not. As the days passed, she could only hope that somehow, despite everything, they had found a place where love could grow, a place where she wouldn't have to feel ashamed of asking for help. The climax and the challenge. Catherine couldn't remember the last time she had felt this kind of pressure. The days had been long, filled with endless hospital visits, and every night when her head hit the pillow, she felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion that threatened to drown her. But even in the midst of her physical weakness, her mind raced. She could no longer ignore the growing tension between what was practical and what was right in front of her. Blake had changed everything. From the moment he entered their lives, everything felt uncertain. The mansion, the luxury, the endless resources at his disposal, they had no place in her world. Yet, there they were, living under his roof, wrapped in the comfort of something that felt so foreign. For Catherine, it was suffocating. Each day she woke up, she felt the weight of her decisions pressing on her chest. Was she truly a guest in his life, or had she unknowingly crossed the line into something more dangerous? Blake had offered more than just money. He had given them a home, a sense of stability, a glimpse into a life that Catherine had never imagined for herself, or her children. But was it right to accept all of this? To allow herself and the twins to depend on someone like him? The answer wasn't clear, and Catherine's heart was torn. What would happen when the dust settled? Would Blake still want them in his life, when her illness was under control, or would they be discarded like a fleeting charity case? As Catherine sat at the dinner table that evening, watching Zach and Lucas eagerly recount their day, a wave of guilt washed over her. They were so happy. Too happy. Blake had become more than just the man who saved them. He had become a part of their lives. The boys had started to look up to him, calling him Mr. Blake, and even laughing at his jokes. It was a bond they were forming effortlessly, and Catherine feared that this connection might be something she couldn't break. Was she being unfair to Blake? He wasn't doing this for accolades or recognition. He genuinely cared. But in her heart, Catherine knew that the more they became entangled with Blake, the harder it would be to let go. Every moment they spent with him made it harder to think about leaving. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about their lives intertwining in ways that were irreversible. That night, after the twins had gone to bed, Catherine found herself standing by the window, staring out at the vast grounds of the estate. Blake's voice echoed in her mind, words he had said earlier that day. "You're welcome here, Catherine. You and the boys have a place in my life, and I'm not going anywhere." His words were reassuring, but to Catherine they were laced with an undeniable sense of finality. Blake had changed his entire schedule for them, had made sacrifices that she hadn't asked for, and yet, here she was, still questioning whether she deserved any of it. Did she deserve this kind of kindness from him? She had been so used to fighting alone, to carrying the burden of her family's survival, that accepting help felt like a betrayal. Her thoughts were interrupted when Blake walked into the room. He had been quiet lately. His usually sharp demeanor softened around them. But something in his eyes tonight was different. There was an uncertainty in his gaze, a vulnerability that she had never seen before. He approached her slowly, almost as if waiting for her to react, as though he knew something was wrong. "You're not okay," Blake said softly, his voice filled with concern. "I can see it, Catherine." She didn't know what to say. The weight of her thoughts was too much to carry, and for a moment she just stared at him, unsure of how to voice what had been building inside her for so long. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," she finally confessed, her voice barely a whisper. Blake's face softened, and he reached for her hand. "What do you mean? You don't have to do this alone anymore. You and the boys are part of my life now. You've always been welcome here. I care about you, Catherine." His words hit her like a tidal wave, and in that moment, she felt her walls beginning to crack. She had been so determined to keep them all at arm's length, to protect herself from getting too involved. But now, with Blake's words, she felt the floodgates opening. There was so much she wanted to say, so much she had kept hidden away for so long, but she couldn't find the words. "I'm scared, Blake," she whispered, the tears finally escaping her eyes. "I'm scared that this is just temporary, that once my health is better, once the doctors say I'm fine, you'll send us away, and I'll be left alone again with nothing." Blake's grip on her hand tightened, and for the first time since meeting him, Catherine saw the raw emotion in his eyes. "You're not alone anymore, Catherine. You and the boys are my family now. I'm not going to let you go. I don't want to live without you." His words were so simple, yet they held so much weight. Catherine felt her heart break and heal all at once. She had been pushing him away, afraid of the pain that could come from getting too close. But in this moment, all of her fears felt insignificant. Blake wasn't going to discard them. He wasn't going to let them fall back into the darkness. But as she looked into his eyes, a new fear began to take root. She was afraid of what would happen next. Afraid that if she allowed herself to fully embrace this new life, it would only make it harder. To walk away when the time came, she wasn't ready for that. "I don't know what to do anymore," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to keep fighting this way." Blake reached up to gently wipe away the tears that had fallen down her cheeks. "You don't have to fight alone, Catherine. Let me help you. Let us help you. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." But Catherine still couldn't shake the nagging doubt in her mind. What would happen when her treatment ended? What would she do when they were no longer dependent on Blake's charity? Could she go back to her old life, to the apartment and the sickness that had threatened to take everything from her? Or would she remain here, in this mansion, with Blake, forever bound to him by something she wasn't sure she could control? The following days were filled with tension. Catherine couldn't shake the growing sense of responsibility she felt for Blake's life. She knew that the more time they spent together, the harder it would be for her to walk away, to sever the ties that had been so carefully woven between them. The more the twins grew to love Blake, the more Catherine saw him as not just their savior, but as someone who had become vital to their future. But the truth was, she wasn't sure if this was the life she wanted. As Blake's patience and care began to chip away at her defenses, Catherine was faced with a decision she wasn't prepared to make. Could she accept the love and support Blake was offering, or would she push him away to protect herself from a pain she wasn't ready to face? Her heart told her one thing, but her mind screamed something different. What would happen if she allowed herself to believe in the future Blake was offering? Could she truly be happy with him, knowing the emotional scars from her past would always be a part of her? And could she ever truly give her sons the stability they deserved, without dragging them back into the world of survival she had always known? As the weeks passed, the tension between what was practical and what was emotional built to a boiling point. Catherine could no longer ignore the conflict in her soul. The choice before her was stark: to embrace the life Blake was offering or to walk away before it was too late. Would she choose to stay in the warmth of Blake's world? Or would she sacrifice her own happiness to ensure that her family could survive without anyone else's help? The crossroads had arrived, and the consequences of her decision would be far-reaching. It was time for Catherine to choose what kind of life she truly wanted, for herself, for her sons, and for the man who had risked everything to give them a future. The clock was ticking, and Catherine's heart raced as she stared at the road ahead. The conclusion and the lesson. The days that followed were filled with moments of quiet reflection. Catherine knew the choice she had to make was not just about her future, but about the future of her sons as well. The more she lived in Blake's world, the more her old life seemed distant, like a faded memory she could never quite reach. But she couldn't ignore the pull of her heart, the pull towards something more than just survival. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the estate, Catherine found herself standing at the edge of the garden. She watched as Zach and Lucas played in the distance, laughing and chasing each other across the expansive lawn. For the first time in a long while, Catherine felt a sense of peace. The boys were happy, truly happy. They had found a sense of security that she had never been able to provide for them. Blake approached her quietly, his presence gentle yet commanding. "You've been quiet," he said, his voice soft but filled with understanding. "Is everything okay?" Catherine turned to face him, her heart racing. She had made her decision. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the family they had become, the bond they had formed. Despite all the doubts that still lingered, despite the fear of what the future might hold, she knew she couldn't let this moment slip away. She couldn't keep pushing him away when everything she had ever wanted was standing right in front of her. "I've been thinking a lot," Catherine began, her voice steady. "About us, about everything. And I've realized that I don't want to keep fighting anymore. I don't want to keep holding myself back." Blake's eyes softened, and he took a step closer, his hand reaching for hers. "You don't have to fight, Catherine. You don't have to be alone anymore." Tears welled up in Catherine's eyes, but this time they were tears of relief. For so long she had fought to protect herself, to keep everything at arm's length. But now, as she stood in the garden, with Blake by her side and her children playing happily in the background, she felt like she could finally let go. She had found a place where she wasn't just surviving, she was living. "I'm ready," Catherine whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'm ready to accept this, accept you, and to be a part of this family. For good." Blake's smile was warm and genuine, and for the first time, Catherine felt that she wasn't just a guest in his life. She was home. Her sons were home, and they had a future together, a future they would build, not with money or charity, but with love, patience, and understanding. That night, as they sat down to dinner as a family, everything felt complete. The mansion, once a cold and lonely place, now felt like a home. The laughter of Zach and Lucas echoed throughout the rooms, filling the space with warmth and life. Catherine looked at Blake across the table, their eyes meeting in a silent exchange. They didn't need words to understand each other anymore. They had found their place in the world, together. Blake reached over and took Catherine's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. She smiled, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known before. It wasn't just the house, the wealth, or the comfort. It was the love they had built together, the love that had transformed their lives. The lesson and the message in the one. And Catherine's journey was not just about finding a way out of her struggles. It was about learning to trust again, to open her heart to the possibility of love and support from others. It was about realizing that sometimes you don't have to fight alone. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from accepting help, from allowing others to be part of your story. The lesson here is simple but profound. True wealth is found in the connections we make and the love we share. It's not in money or material possessions, but in the people who stand by you when the world feels like it's falling apart. Catherine's transformation was not about wealth. It was about love, acceptance, and the courage to embrace something beautiful, even when it felt uncertain. For Blake, his transformation was just as powerful. He learned that true success isn't measured by how much you can achieve on your own, but by how much you can give and share with others. The real measure of a person's worth is how much love and compassion they're willing to offer, even when it's hard. Blake, who had spent years guarding his heart, learned that sometimes the most valuable things in life come not from power or control, but from vulnerability and openness. Take action. This story is a reminder that none of us should face life's struggles alone. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to let others in. We are all deserving of love, compassion, and second chances. If you're struggling, if you feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, remember, you don't have to do it alone. Reach out. Let people into your life. You may just find that the help you need is closer than you think. So, if you've enjoyed this story and feel inspired by Catherine and Blake's journey, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts below. What part of this story resonated with you the most? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between pride and love? Let's talk about it. Your story might just inspire someone else who needs to hear it.